Today we're going to be discussing assessments in education. We'll be reviewing various types of assessments, the best practices for choosing the correct assessment, as well as grading and recording the results from those assessments. When we discuss assessments, we're talking about more than just assigning a grade to a student's work. We're measuring their level of understanding. We're also comparing that understanding to the type of goal that we were assessing for. And in addition, providing feedback to help the student continue to achieve their goals. Assessments are intended to provide educators evidence so they can infer what students know, understand, and are able to do. So it's important that we choose an assessment that helps us identify the student's degree of understanding. The best way to achieve this is by implementing the photo album approach in your classroom. This is simply acknowledging that there is no one-size-fits-all assessment. It's committing to using multiple means of measuring student performance and progress in an effort to avoid favoring specific learning styles. We want to ensure that there is not an over-reliance on utilizing those easy to give, easy to grade assessments. We want to provide valid, reliable, varied assessment options so that all learners are getting an opportunity to demonstrate their abilities. There are many advantages to implementing the photo album approach. Not only are students provided multiple different methods for demonstrating their understanding, but the teacher is then provided a collection of evidence to review to appropriately assess the student's understanding. Given that there are an abundant amount of assessment options, we want to ensure that our choice aligns with our lesson goals, meaning that the assessment we are using to measure student performance should align with the goal that we are asking of the student. We should begin this by asking, are we measuring what the student should know? Are we measuring what they should be able to do? Or are we measuring their attitude towards the topic? All of these factors will impact how and what we teach. When discussing lesson goals, there are typically three categories: declarative knowledge, procedural knowledge, and student disposition. This means that we're assessing what the student knows, what they can do, or their attitude towards a particular goal or topic. For example, if we are checking a skill, then we want to ensure that we're using a performance assessment. If we're checking the student's knowledge of a unit, we would want to do an objective assessment. The next factor to consider is the function of the assessment. When are we administering it, and what is our purpose? Are we using a diagnostic assessment to assess the student's prior knowledge, or a formative assessment during the lesson to guide our instruction? Or is it the summative assessment where we're using it as our end of unit summary assessment? Regardless of the type of assessment and the function of the assessment, our goal is still to provide constructive feedback, whether that's to adapt our lesson plan or to assist the student with additional support. Our feedback should always be timely so that it can be helpful to the student. It should be so specific that they have a clear understanding of how to improve, and it also allows them an opportunity to improve and adjust. Next, we're going to move into grading those assessments. We'll be discussing the parts and best practices for grading and reporting student achievement. Grading always starts based on established criteria. That means there's a set grading rubric so that students are graded uniformly. And then we have a set system, whether we're using symbols or numbers, to translate those results to reflect the student's performance. And then that grade or symbol is shared with parents and administration, reflecting the results of the student's assessment and achievement. All right, so let's explore these grading practices a little further. The first thing we always want to focus on is our learning goal and standard when we're grading. Does it align? The second is the evidence. We want to make sure that it's varied and we have multiple methods for interpreting the student's performance. And then we always want to use that established criteria that makes sure that there's a uniform, accountable way that the student was graded. Next, we need to consider, does this assessment need to be graded? Some of our pre-assessments don't need to be included in our grade book. We also want to avoid that average grading, meaning we're focusing on the students' later assessments and not averaging all of their grades together. And lastly, we want to always keep it achievement focused. Focus on their strengths and the progress that they're made so that we can be responsive educators that help our students succeed.